most soldiers, World War II ended in 1945. For most of the world, the devastation, suffering, and conflict had come to a conclusion. The soldiers laid down their arms, the bombs stopped falling, and families tried to rebuild from the wreckage of war. However, for one man, the war did not end. Not in 1945, not in 1950, not in 1960. He carried on fighting for 29 more years, hidden deep in the jungle, believing that his country still needed him. This is the incredible true story of Hiroo Onoda, the Japanese soldier who refused to surrender, who lived in the dense jungles of the Philippines, carrying out a mission he believed was still active, long after the rest of the world had moved on. Hiroo Onoda was born in 1922 in Wakayama Prefecture, Japan. Growing up, he was raised in a nation where duty and discipline were paramount. Japan was a country built on the spirit of Bushido, the samurai code of honor. A man was expected to dedicate himself fully to his duty, to his family, and above all, to his emperor. Onoda, like many young boys of his generation, grew up under the shadow of this nationalistic mindset, one that had been reinforced through years of militaristic expansion. As a young man, Onoda joined the Imperial Japanese Army, eager to serve his nation. He was not just another infantryman. He was selected for something greater, specialized training as an intelligence officer. He learned the art of gathering information, sabotage, and survival. His training was intense, demanding, and relentless. He was taught that surrender was not an option, that death was preferable to dishonor. This lesson was drilled into him repeatedly. No matter the situation, no matter the hardships, he was to carry out his mission at all costs, even if it meant surviving alone for years. By 1944, the tides of war had shifted against Japan. The Allied forces had reclaimed much of the Pacific. The Japanese military was struggling to hold its ground. That same year, Onoda was deployed to Lubang Island, a remote island in the Philippines. His orders were clear: wage guerrilla warfare, disrupt enemy operations, destroy airstrips and piers, and most importantly, never surrender. No matter what, he was to remain steadfast in his duty, no matter how long it took. If reinforcements were delayed, he was to continue fighting. If Japan fell, he was to continue fighting. If the war seemed lost, he was to continue fighting. But war is unpredictable. Plans change, and reality is often harsher than what is imagined in a military briefing room. In February 1945, the Allied forces landed on Lubang Island, quickly overpowering the Japanese garrison. Most of the Japanese soldiers stationed there were either killed or taken as prisoners of war. Onoda and a few other soldiers, however, managed to escape into the dense, untamed jungle. They had no idea that this retreat would last for nearly 3 decades. In August 1945, Japan surrendered. The war was officially over. But deep in the jungle, Onoda and his men had no way of knowing. The Japanese government, realizing that some soldiers might still be in hiding, sent out leaflets announcing the war's end. Planes flew over Lubang Island, dropping messages that declared Japan's surrender and urged any remaining soldiers to come out peacefully. But to Onoda and his comrades, these messages seemed like an enemy trick. They had been trained to resist psychological warfare. Surrender leaflets, propaganda, messages broadcast on local radios, enemy deception. As far as Onoda was concerned, the war was still ongoing, and he had no intention of being fooled by the enemy's ploys. In the years that followed, the Japanese government made several attempts to reach them. Leaflets were dropped from planes announcing the war's end. But to Onoda, it was enemy propaganda. Old newspapers and radio messages were seen as psychological warfare. The world had moved on, but Onoda remained locked in the past. In 1950, Yuichi Akatsu, reinforced Onoda's paranoia. If one of their own had given up, what else could be a trick? To Onoda, Akatsu's surrender was proof that the enemy was closing in, trying to break their spirits. So he and the remaining men continued to fight. The years dragged on. They became ghosts in the jungle, emerging only to steal food or clash with locals. They repaired their tattered uniforms, maintained their rifles, and prepared for the return of Japanese forces that would never come. The world around them had changed, but for them, time had frozen in 1945. By the 1970s, Onoda had become a legend. Stories of a ghost soldier still lurking in the jungle fascinated the world. Then in 1974, a young Japanese traveler named Norio Suzuki set out to find him. And against all odds, he did. Face to face with Onoda, Suzuki tried to convince him that the war was over. But Onoda refused to believe a mere traveler. He needed orders from a superior officer. And so in March 1974, Japan sent Onoda's former commander, Major Yoshimi Taniguchi, to Lubang. When Taniguchi arrived, he delivered Onoda's final orders. The war is over. You are relieved of duty. After 29 years, Hiroo Onoda finally surrendered. He emerged from the jungle in his old uniform, rifle in hand, still in perfect condition. The world was stunned. He had survived for decades, evading capture, hunting for food, and following orders long after his country had changed. When he returned to Japan, he found a nation that was completely different from the one he had fought for. The warrior spirit had faded, replaced by a modern, industrialized, peaceful society. He struggled to adjust. Eventually, he moved to Brazil, seeking peace far away from the land he had once defended. He would later return to Japan, dedicating his time to teaching survival skills to young people. Hiroo Onoda's story is one of extraordinary resilience, unwavering loyalty, and the tragic cost of war. He was a soldier who followed orders to the letter, even when the world around him changed beyond recognition. His tale raises important questions. How far should duty take us? When does loyalty become obsession? And how do we let go of the past? In the end, Onoda was neither a hero nor a villain, just a soldier who followed orders. But his story forces us to ask, when does duty become obsession? And how do we let go of the past?